Good afternoon, everyone. Glad you could make it on well, actually, it's a kind of sunny day, isn't it? At least, no. What about Friday? Wasn't that pretty cold? Welcome. This is the Adventures in Vegetarian Cooking and Health Lecture Series. And today we have Dr. Manuel Alva. He is a board-certified gastroenterologist. He works out of McNeil Hospital, HINSDALE Hospital, and LaGrange. And we're glad to have him here today to present information about keeping our gastrointestinal system good health. And following the program, you'll be going downstairs and be able to see some foods demonstrated that are healthy, and you'll get recipes. You'll be able to taste the foods as well. We do appreciate you coming. We like your feedback, so there is an evaluation form following the program. And we will have some free drawings for you too, so make sure you get your little slip of paper that we gave you to turn in, and hopefully you'll be one of the lucky ones today. We'd like to introduce Dr. Alva, and he'll be able to answer your questions as well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, and I'm very glad to be here. This was our church, our home church a few years ago. We have certainly been blessed by being here, by the friends that are still here. But today we're going to talk about something we all have. We all own and operate a gastrointestinal tract. All of us have a mouth. Yes? I can see that. Not all of us, though, have the exit, right? The other end. Some people have lost it because of cancer. Have you heard about rectal cancer? Yes. Farrah Fawcett and some other people have had this cancer in which they have to lose that part of the body, and there's an outlet created in the belly, in the abdomen, and a little bag that will collect the sewage, right? The stool. It's very sad when that happens, but it's better to still be alive, right? Even with that, if we're going to learn how to own and operate our gastrointestinal tract. If you think about it, it's just a hole, right, inside of us. It has an entry and an exit, and things happen inside. We think there's a way to swallow, and there's a way to digest, and there's a way to process and absorb, and in order to eliminate waste products. And a little organ, a little sub-brain, right? A little brain that is hanging on the back called the cerebellum that does everything automatic for us. You don't have to think now to walk anymore, right? Some of us don't even have to think about driving. We just put the key and, answering phones and applying makeup and drinking coffee while we get to our work. Sometimes people don't know how they get there because it's all an automatic function. Your eyes are seeing the road and calculating distances while you're doing something else. That's very dangerous to do. I do not recommend you do that. But our cerebellum does a lot of things. And swallowing, it's an integrated function. You don't have to think. You just put food in your mouth and you swallow. Then there's the esophagus. The esophagus just transports the food. We think people say it's just a pipe. It's just a pipe. Takes food from your throat, puts it down in your stomach, where the work starts. That is true, but if you have had misery in your esophagus, you probably disagree that it's just a tube, right? It's a tube that sometimes hurts very bad. If you have reflux symptoms, for example, how many of you had reflux symptoms? I mean, all of us can probably tell, yeah. Sometimes you eat and you bend over to tie your shoes and you feel food in your throat. That's, it came back, right? That happens, that's normal. In some people will happen more often than that. Sad thing to say is that mixture of food and acid, right? We're not talking about the stomach yet, but we can anticipate that the stomach produces acid because sometimes we can feel it. And there's sometimes this other thing that is not acid or burning, it's kind of bitter tasting. And it's more yellow than clear. So there are some things that come up the esophagus that you can tell the difference by either regurgitating and vomiting. Whatever goes up there for a long time may cause some damage. Acid is good, actually. Acid, we're going to see the stomach next. Acid is the greatest thing to have. It disinfects our food. It prepares complex foods for digestion, right? If you didn't have acid in your stomach, you wouldn't be able to digest fats and proteins and a lot of things that will cause you indigestion. If you cannot absorb any food, your bacteria, millions of them in your gut, are very, very happy. If you don't absorb food, they have more. So they eat more, and when bacteria in your gut have more food available, well, what do bacteria do? They eat. They are there, so they have to eat, and they have to expel whatever they do when they do their living processes, so they produce a lot of gas. So the more food you do not absorb, the more is available for your bacteria, the more gas, and people complain sometimes a lot of bloating and gas, and it's a combination of factors, actually. Food that do not absorb well, and intestines that are a little slower. There's a lot of medications that will slow your intestines. People don't think about it, but we have blood pressure medicine, for example. Some type are called the calcium channel blockers, right? And they're supposed to relax the arteries so the blood pressure goes down, but they also relax your intestines so the food that needs to be transported just stays there and stagnates there and gets this famous word, fermented. What's fermentation? Well, fermentation is what happens when the bacteria eat and put out a little of their gas out. That's fermentation. That's how you make yogurt. That's how you make sauerkraut. We don't, but some people make alcoholic beverages out of that. This is fermentation. That happens inside of you. And just as a short commercial, you can have fermentation in your gut and produce your own alcohol if you're not careful. Yes. This was wonderfully described in The Lancet. It's a medical magazine from England. In an article I would say more than 20 years ago. If you have, for example, a lot of yeast on your gut and you like chocolate, how many of you like chocolate? Yeah, it's okay. We have a lot of sincere people here. Chocolate is not the best food, but in small, short amounts has some benefits. Problem is that it's mixed with milk and cream and a lot of things that we're going to discuss a little today. If you have a lot of these sugars that are added to the chocolate, because chocolate is not chocolate, they add a lot of stuff, right? Sugar. If you have yeast and eat chocolate that has this sugar and this cream, the yeast will produce alcohol out of that, and it will be measurable in your blood, right? So you're driving down the street, and they stop you because you just crossed a red light, and the officer thinks you're a little tipsy, and they check your blood alcohol level. If you don't drink alcohol, it's going to be less than the legal limit, right? The legal limit is 0.08 or 80 milligrams % in Illinois. Well, in some countries, it's much less than that. Really. In Sweden, for example, the legal limit is 0.02. 20 milligrams %, 20 milligrams per deciliter of blood, of alcohol. If they measure that, and you're driving while intoxicated. How did they come with that number, you may ask? Why do Swedish people are so particular about this? Well, they kind of take pride in producing the safest cars in the world. They have the Volvos, and every time there's a crash with a Volvo vehicle involved, not only they call the police and the paramedics, they also call a representative from the factory to check if there was any involvement on their vehicles in the crash. So after all this collaboration, they came up saying, no, it's not the cars, it's the alcohol. Let's go down to 60, let's go down to 40, let's go down to 20. Less than 20 is no problem. If you eat a lot of chocolate and you have a little more in your gut, you may get levels of 26, 28. But sometimes the esophagus gets sick, and those muscles that have to be coordinated do not work. And there's a number of diseases that can cause that we don't think about. And there's a number of medications also that will hold your esophagus hostage of not doing its work of milking the food in the direction of the stomach very frequently. You can count the contractions of the esophagus. 15, 20 times per minute. The esophagus is just transporting food down. If you take a calcium channel blocker or a beta blocker, which are blood pressure medications, they go by different names, verapamil, nifedipine, diltiazem, propranolol, metoprolol, they may slow down the automatic function in a major or minor degree. You may be stronger than your husband or your wife, and you take both the same medicine, he may be more affected than you. That depends on the individual, but they all affect the normal motion of the esophagus. Let me make a little short commercial here for healthy living and blood pressure, since we're talking about blood pressure medication. You don't need blood pressure medication. You need to slow it down if you learn how to eat. That's a treatment for high blood pressure. A treatment for the ogres, the monsters of modern disease, hypertension, high blood pressure, sugar or diabetes mellitus, high cholesterol or high fat. These three monsters that kill a lot of people, right, every year. Heart disease is the #1 killer still in this country. Then you have strokes. Then you have cancer, right? And these three triplets, these cousins or brothers, they also have a lot to do with cancer. Those three are curable. Those three are reversible. Even the heart disease, these plugs of cholesterol that are just closing your bloodstream. If you do the Drano, this plant-based diet, whole foods plant-based diet. Now talking about the store, okay? Whole foods means whole foods. You have food in its most integral, in its most entire form. Not orange juice, you have what? Oranges. Not apple juice or applesauce, you have apples, right? Not vegetarian patty, you have cilantro, and you have potatoes with a peel, right? And you have kale, and cauliflower, and broccoli, and the more entire, the more complete the food you eat, the healthier you're going to be. I know that for a fact because I had to do that myself to revert high blood pressure, thanks to my dear wife here that told me, you want to die young like your father did when he was 53 with multiple strokes already? You want to do that? I said, no. Well, then you need to change your diet. I said, I don't want to. I don't want to change my diet. Well, you're going to die. You know, you have a good life insurance policy? Not really. We're going to get me one? Well, you can revert high blood pressure. Thank God I did. Well, thank God, cooperation with my wife and God and the agents that He has created for us to be healthy. Because that's the truth. The maker knows the ingredients to make the body function better. If you have an expensive car, you want to read the instruction manual and give it what it needs. So you can revert, and this is the commercial. We're going to stop the commercial right here. You don't need to, for many years, take high blood pressure medication. You can learn how to eat better, and your physician will notice that. He'll congratulate you for that. He will start cutting down the medication until you go to zero. If you forget anything I say today, please take this home. If you use the ingredients, your body needs to work better. If you eat that, your diseases will revert. And you'll be amazed. You say, well, wait a minute. I was told that I had to take this medication for the rest of my life. Yes, because we physicians do not trust patients. We think they're going to do whatever they want. No, but if the patients are rightly motivated, not by us. We cannot motivate anybody. You can just, tell them, these are the dangers. There's a higher power that needs to motivate everyone, which is the same one that created you. If that higher power tells you, you know what? Enough of sickness, enough of drugs, enough of artificial things. Come into my plan, and you just go for it. So, some medications, some diseases will affect the esophagus and will have you have more, sort of. These brains tell the stomach, whenever there's food coming, he said, I'm going to take the food away. I'm not going to cook anything for these dogs. I'm just going to ring the bell. Ring, 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 ring. The dogs heard the bell, and what happened? The mouth got full of saliva. They said, oh, food, 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 food. No food. You know, they were programmed. And sometimes we can also be programmed if we don't think about it. See, the kids look at the McDonald's sign, right? They look at the big M with the golden arches and the red, and they see the cheese melting down, and Daddy, 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 stop, right? Daddy says, no, you know, you're going to get sick, you're going to get heart disease, cancer. Let's just keep driving down the road to the vegetable, to the produce store, right? And you go, yeah. Well, since maybe you're a kid, you probably don't say yay, but that's a good thing. Anyway, your esophagus is supposed to milk down whenever acid or food goes back up. Your esophagus receives that and milks it or presses it back to the stomach again. That's where it belongs. If the same thing happens again, the esophagus does the same. That happens to all of us. If the acid or bile juices or foods dwell or stay there for a longer time, half of you will feel the heartburn, the burning feeling. Just half of you. Let's say, Thanksgiving, we have all the family home, Grandpa came, and everybody's there, and we eat, big, sumptuous American Thanksgiving meal. And it's late because, we had to wait for some of them, and some people are sleepy, and they say, well, let's go to bed, and they go to bed with a full stomach. What happens? Well, when you lay down, this is you upright, you lay down, your stomach is a little higher than your throat. So food will start trying to go by gravity down to your throat. So your esophagus, if it's healthy, just pushes it back to the stomach where it belongs. Closes, right? But this dinner, you ate a lot of fatty or greasy foods. So the muscle that is supposed to close tightly at the end of your esophagus is affected by this fat and relaxes. And if you down a little caffeine or chocolate with it, this muscle relaxes even more. So most of the people that just had a big meal have some reflux, have some food or acid or bile coming to the throat. Trouble is only half of them will feel anything, right? You wake up and something's happening, something's burning. The other half will just go through, just will sleep through it. It's funny, though. They have studied people that have reflux, and this is the number one thing we're going to learn. We're going to talk about three things. I forgot to make this little introduction. We're going to talk about three things. One is reflux. The other one, we're going to go down to the other end, constipation. And then we're going to go back to the middle. I'm going to talk about liver problems and fatty liver and its association with diabetes, high blood pressure, and cholesterol, because that's a very common disease. Those three are very common, by the way. You may have experienced those at some time in your life. Anyway, we go back to your night full of food in the stomach and the reflux, and half of the people feeling something, waking up, drinking a glass of water, maybe staying up to watch some television while things will go down, finally. The other half will sleep through it. And scientists have studied this so well. Have you heard about sleep labs, sleep laboratories? People just go to sleep, and they are hooked up with all these electrodes on the brain to see their brain activity, and a blood pressure measurement cuff is applied to measure the pressure, and a little thing on the finger to measure the oxygen, and they record a lot of your activity, your brain activity during these sleep studies. And I don't know if you have a chance, if you have a significant other, a husband, a wife, or you have children, or if you have parents. I remember my mother did this when I was a kid. I would check on them when they were asleep. Some people snore, right? Right? Snore, right? When you have food in your stomach, your brain is preparing your whole body not to get into trouble. Your brain, with the help of God and the Holy Spirit, monitor your activity so you when you're asleep. It's a miracle to wake up every morning, let me tell you that. So many things can go wrong at night. If you are one of these that snores, for example, your oxygen in your blood will decrease, sometimes to critical levels. And because that happens, your brain may be awakened and you may, The brain is saying, well, you know, this foolish guy or girl went to bed with a full stomach. Let's protect him or her from dying tonight. So what do? We're going to try to tighten all the muscles that go and will receive this food or acid coming into the throat, will impede those from going into the lungs and killing this person. So what happens? All these muscles here increase in muscle tone. You're not thinking about it. You're asleep. These muscles are increased in tone, and all of a sudden, person starts snoring because the airways up here are a little more constricted because of the stomach being full and reflux happening. And as we said, half of the people not feeling anything. So you can snore, and when you snore, your oxygen is low, your brain starts producing hormones. Hormones are chemical substances. The brain gets a little nervous. It says, if this is to continue, right? Somebody eats at night, every night, the brain says, this is going to continue. We have to store energy to save in case we need to breathe harder. When you snore, your muscles are working harder. This is your exercise, if you please, right? So the brain says, let's store energy in different places. There are certain hormones like cortisol is one of them that supposedly shouldn't be produced that much at night. It should let you sleep. And some other hormones I use in case of emergency. With the end result of you storing extra fat wherever you don't need it. So it is true. You are what you eat. That's part of the story. You are what you digest and absorb. That's another part of the story. But more, you are what your brain tells your gut what to absorb and where to deposit it. So we go a little farther. You can eat a lot of garbage, right? Hopefully you don't do that. If you can eat garbage 1 or 2 times because there's nothing else, your brain will still, if it's healthy, will keep it, keep stuff from getting absorbed and just throwing it in your guts again. The problem is that we keep repeating and repeating and repeating the same pattern. The brain says, well, this must be the new normal then. If they're eating a lot of fried chicken and a lot of hamburgers, then we need to start absorbing that too. It takes a little while. I mean, you have to really push the envelope for the brain to start changing its pattern of behavior. So you can do that. So heartburn, number one thing, please do not eat at night. Right? Some doctors will say, well, you can elevate the head of the bed, 4 to 6 inches, right? Then you slide on your pillows at night and you end up flat anyway. Then we also say, well, we don't say that. It's interesting. How many know what Prilosec is? Prilosec, Nexium, Lansoprazole, Omeprazole, Pantoprazole, Prazole, right? All those medications, what do? They tell the stomach, they block the production of acid. They tell the stomach, we don't need acid, so the stomach makes less and less acid. Well, you think, where does all the materials that were to produce acid go? They stay in your blood, they stay on your cells in your stomach. They just don't go out to the hole of the stomach to digest, right? Or to disinfect. You still produce some acid. So these medications, if you use more and more and more doses, then you have less and less and less acid. And if you do this for 2 or 3 years, before we used to think, no, they're safe. People can take it for 5, 10 years. I was happily just dispensed a few years ago. Here, take this. Refills 11. The pharmacy will call. I wouldn't even go to the chair. Yeah, give him 11 more, another 11 more. What a mistake. When I was convinced of what was I doing wrong, I realized I'm also doing wrong for my patients. Just refilling this. More than 3 years of any prazole medication will decrease the absorption of calcium and will result in less calcium in your bones. Then you end up with osteoporosis, brittle bones. Number 2, the amount of acid necessary to disinfect bacteria and to kill a few and to maintain the order of animals or plants in your gut. We all have a garden. We actually all have a zoo in our guts, right? We are all zookeepers. You go to Brookfield Zoo to see the animals, and they have beautiful flowers and plants. We all have beautiful flowers and plants and animals in our gut. Hopefully we don't have many animals in our gut. Those are bad, right? We have plants, though. Bacteria are plants. They are the smaller cells of plants that God created, and they are there for a reason. Good bacteria give us some vitamins that we wouldn't get otherwise, vitamin K and vitamin B12, some of them. They are just wonderful, but if the bad bacteria we eat, because, there's some bad bacteria that you can get in the environment, they have to be destroyed by acid. If you take the prazoles frequently, you grow some bad bacteria in your gut. You change the zoo. Let's say you go to the Brookfield Zoo today, and the lions are out of the cage. And instead of having 2 lions, there's 20 lions. The 2 that are in the cage are in the cage, but the other 18 are roaming around. You don't want to have a zoo in your stomach or a place where things are disorganized. There's a lot of knowledge now that has been gathered about what happens when your flora, right, your intestinal flora changes. Those little bacteria actually have to do a lot with obesity, for one thing. When you have a lot of bacteria of the bad type, they will produce some substances that your intestines, even your large intestine is not supposed to absorb anything. Your large intestine is there to reabsorb, not to lose water, right? If we wouldn't have a large intestine, we'll be like little ducks, just, pooping 5-6 liters of liquid a day. Can you imagine, having to drink all back to just, compensate for what you lose? The large intestine sucks water up, gives it back to the blood. So when you don't drink enough water, your colon, your bowel is drinking for you. It's drinking water from the stool, and you go, yuck. Well, your bowel has it's like a network of defense. It doesn't absorb the bacteria or the products up to a point. If you have a lot of bacteria or some disease in your bowel, it will do just that. So taking these prazoles for your reflux will modify the things on the other end. And this bacteria will sometimes produce substances that your colon may absorb and may give you extra calories. If you're constipated, you'll even absorb more of these calories in your large intestine. We're talking about 800 extra calories. Do you know, folks, and probably yourself, you've done a diet, you really cut down, you have counted your calories, but you don't seem to lose any weight. Well, your bowel, more if you're constipated, is giving you some extra calories that you don't need, and you didn't eat just that day, probably a couple of days ago, hopefully not a week ago. So medications for reflux cause all these changes if you use them over many years. What about just changing your dietary habits? Another evil I was doing by prescribing these medications and just refilling, I started looking at these patients, whenever I got convinced of this is bad medicine. I started calling it. The pharmacy sent a refill, no refill. Come over here. Okay. We checked these patients. They had about 10-15% more of the weight they had when they started. And that's not surprising because, with time you probably have noticed as years go by, we tend to gain a little weight. But all of them had higher weights. If they happened to have high cholesterol levels or high blood pressure, they were still taking those medications, maybe a higher dosage. Their cholesterol numbers were a little higher because they didn't have a mechanism of punishment. When you have reflux, if you're smart, you think, this is not right. I may have eaten something probably more than what I needed or something that is causing this. Typically, if you have reflux and if you're in the middle of the Sahara or the Amazon jungle and you don't have medications or a pharmacy, you'll stop eating, for a couple of meals. You'll drink water. You'll be eating some bland food just to pacify the stomach, and everything will go back to normal. What happens if we take a pill that takes the symptoms away? We go, hooray! We can go back and eat the chips and eat the hamburgers and eat the pizzas, right? And keep drinking the sodas and all those things that will give us symptoms. But now we don't have the punishment, so we just go happily and increase our weights, increase our cholesterol. I was noticing that because of my habit of just writing the prazoles, I was actually hurting my patients. And I said, no more. So they come back and says, well, let's do this, right? I don't like to be a punishing doctor. Well, I don't like to prescribe for you. If you want it, go somebody else. That's not the right approach. You don't heal anybody by doing that. So you say, this is what you need to do. We're going to give you just 2 more months, but these are the changes you need to make. These suggestions that the medical literature says this, right? Lifestyle interventions and dietary changes may not result in cure of the reflux. Therefore, there's a whole scheme. You have to use these medications in this dosage. If they don't work, you have to use this much different medication. If the patient still has reflux, probably you have to refer him for reflux surgery. You have heard about the fundoplication surgery. There's a hospital that will come in the radio and announce that they do it laparoscopically now. It's an outpatient procedure. You'll be out in less than 24 hours, back home. Resume a normal life. Nothing but a normal life. These patients now have a little tightened esophagus here. The stomach has been sewn up, so they have no reflux, but they also have some trouble swallowing. They notice that they have to eat slower and chew better. And their diet changes by force. So, if we take care of a disease and cause other diseases, we're not doing any good. If you change your dietary habits, right? Medical literature says dietary changes and lifestyle changes do not really help. That is because no one is paying for studies that will prove just that. I mean, which pharmaceutical company, those are the ones with the big money, will pay investigators to see what is the effect of good lifestyle and dietary changes versus their medication? And if they do, they will study the symptoms, right? What are the response symptom-wise? And the study is run for 6 months, 12 months probably, and that's it. I'm not talking about people that have actually had an endoscopy and have big, nasty ulcers in the esophagus that will, if not resolved or taken care of, may end up being cancer. They need to have a course of the prazoles, but they also need to learn how to take care of this better. It's just like any other chronic disease. You don't want to be taking medications for the rest of your life, causing side effects. If you could avoid it, if you could do something yourself that is going to result in better health for you, in maintaining your body weight, maintaining your cholesterol levels, and decreasing the chances of all the dietary cancers, right? Colon cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, pancreatic, breast, prostate, stomach, and a number of other cancers. If you could avoid that, why not just stop and think and make a better choice when you eat? So what's the best food to avoid reflux? Well, a lot of people say, don't eat oranges. There's a lot of prohibitions. No tomato, no oranges. That's what doctors usually say. That's what I used to say. Actually, tomatoes, if you eat tomato sauce, tomato ketchup, right? That was the vegetables in the American diet, right? French fries, ketchup. Ouch. And the little iceberg lettuce that comes in the hamburgers. Not a good thing. So tomato-based products that contain vinegar, not the best thing for your reflux. But if you eat a tomato, people will say, well, that gives me symptoms. Usually it's because they're eating some other things with the tomato. Nobody just eats tomatoes. If you just eat tomatoes one day, you won't get reflux. Unless you have ulcers, then you feel anything you eat will hurt. But it's because of the other stuff we're eating, and we blame, okay, I was told not to eat tomatoes, so I ate tomatoes, that must be it. I'm going to stop eating tomatoes. Or oranges. Careful with this. When you have ulcers, good idea to stop the oranges for a little bit. But not really. You have to stop the orange juice, which is not a natural food. That's going to be acid that you swallow, right? How long does it take for you to swallow a glass of orange juice? That depends on how busy or how in a hurry are you. I've seen people drinking a glass of orange juice in 2 breaths, right? That's it, done, okay? Now, how many oranges did it take for that glass of oranges to be filled? Let's be conservative. Let's say 3, okay? 3 oranges, right? Because they make it from concentrate also, right? They take this orange juice to the big factory, they boil it until the water goes, and they make concentrate, and then they transport the concentrate all over the world in big tank ships, because it doesn't get spoiled. It's so acid, it's so concentrated, no bacteria is going to live there. Well, we haven't found one yet. But this is sold over the world, and when it gets to the place that it's going to be used, it's diluted with water and is sold as orange juice. Okay, so the acidity of this orange juice, let's say, contains the acid and sugars of 3 oranges, okay? So you drink it in 2 seconds or 10 seconds or 30 seconds, let's say. All that acid falls in your stomach and starts bouncing into the esophagus. You're going to feel symptoms. It's like acid in your stomach just coming back up. But let's say you take an orange, right? Wash it, cut it, cut it in pieces, and eat everything that is inside. You have to chew that, right? Some people will spit the seeds. Some people will say, I have diverticulosis. My doctor said no seeds, so they start spitting all the seeds. That is old-fashioned medicine. Believe me, there's actually a medical report that came out last year that says we have told patients not to eat seeds for diverticulosis. That's not right. No, it's not proven that, in autopsy studies where people have diverticulosis, we have not found diverticulitis with seeds of fruits inside to say that's the cause. They cause your intestinal mucus to be more sticky. Have you touched honey? Sometimes, some people leave honey on the table and you touch it, you go, right? Okay, that's a kind of secretion. It's a little thicker that your intestines produce when you're using eggs, dairy, cheese, and the rest of the animal products. So that mucus is like that. When stool gets in those pockets, those diverticulum pockets, it should be popping out because the secretions inside are so oily, so lubricant that, as soon as your intestine contracts the next time, they just go out. Sometimes we do colonoscopies and we see these pouches full of sticky stool and we're, gunning them with water and trying to do something and to no avail. That stool is just too gluey, too sticky. And that's the result of an animal-based protein. It's just full of that. So we have been telling patients do not eat seeds because it may be lodged in your diverticula, and then you're going to get an infection. So these patients are very careful. They eat an orange, they probably eat just the juice because they're unsure about the fiber. It's going to end up there on my sacs. It's going to cause inflammation. You can chew the orange seeds if you want some extra phytonutrients and phytochemicals. Sometimes we buy products, right, because they have this nutrient and this nutrient. An orange, a simple tomato, a simple avocado has more than 10,000 phytochemical substances, all created for different things, for our skin, for our hair. You can see that I learned this too late. If I would have been, listening to my wife and, to what God has told us, I would have had a different diet. I changed my diet too late, but, for some things, not for life, hopefully. But for my hair, I just took too long, so my hair fell out, My white blood cells thought that the roots were antigenic, and they would just eliminate that. So that's what I have to show for that. But foods, whole foods, have everything we need. A plant-based diet, a vegetarian diet, is the one that makes our intestines work better, our stomach work better. Then let's go down to the stomach, okay? So the prazoles, take them if you have been prescribed because somebody looked and there's a condition inside that merits you to heal ulcers or what we call esophagitis. But also, while you're taking these medications, start already your changes. So when they stop at the end of 2 or 3 months, you're ready to get on with life and you'll end up with better health. This ulcer in the esophagus was just a canary in the gold mine to help you stay alive and to have a better life. So don't keep doing the same things expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity, right? Keep doing the same thing, I don't get better. So reflux, something that is easy to treat. If you have reflux that is intractable, just try fasting. Try fasting once a week. Drink water. Fasting is not punishment. It's not just drinking water and just beating yourself. I'm so hungry. Fasting, as it was in the Bible, in Bible times, is when people didn't cook. They didn't go to the furnace and, make the bread and bake all these things. It's just a day of freedom. You just drink water. It's available. You eat fresh fruits and vegetables. They're available. You don't have to prepare anything. And if you try that diet once a week, it's the best thing you can do. It's going to change the texture of your skin. It's going to change the activity of your white blood cells. It's going to change the levels of production of acid in your stomach. It's going to help you reduce blood pressure. And you're not going to be punishing yourself. You understand? Right? Sometimes we have been taught, okay, day of fasting, just water. That's it. So, if the kids are told that, they are like teenagers. That's the worst thing you can do to a teenager, right? You got to do a day of fasting, it's just water for you. It's like, no, it's just the things that do not need preparation that God has created. Those are easily digestible. I'm not talking about baking grains or making porridge or no, just basic things. They do not harm your intestines. You've heard about this celiac disease, for example, right? I'm making a little interruption here about, we're transitioning. We're going to have a lot of time. Maybe we'll have another program for the rest of the GI tract. But some people have celiac disease in which if they eat gluten, wheat, barley, rye, things that are healthy, right, and good, they get sick. The same people will not get sick if they eat just fruits, vegetables. Where will they get their protein? That's the question that always people ask. If you just eat seeds and fruits and vegetables, where do you get your protein? Well, by eating those fruits, those vegetables, and those seeds. The requirement for an adult of daily protein goes between 30 grams, maybe 40 grams if you're doing something that requires more rebuilding in your body. If you're sick, if you have burns, maybe you need 60, 70, 80. But you can get those proteins easily by eating a balanced plant-based diet. If you eat the regular American diet or if you add meat to it, you'll end up having twice or 3 times the amount you need. There are situations in which people need more protein, burn injuries especially, after surgery, just very few instances in which you need that. Protein will make your stomach produce more acid. The more protein you put in your stomach, the extra, right, the additional, not the one that you need every day, especially if it's an animal source, your stomach will produce more acid. An animal-based diet, your liver is a wonderful laboratory. It filters the blood, it throws away bile, which is liquid stool. Bile is liquid stool, right? It's just on its way down to the small bowel and the large bowel for that liquid to be reabsorbed, to be mixed with dead cells and some vegetables that are not absorbed to form your stool. Stool is bile plus dead cells plus non-absorbable vegetables. But your bile can be very toxic. I can go down to the small bowel and pull a little vial of bile from a vegetarian, a complete plant-based eater, and I can do the same and get 2 little bottles of bile, one from a complete eater, whatever, you get, and the other from a plant-based eater. And the bile from the plant-based eater will be containing less toxic substances, less cancer-producing substances. If you want to count the amount of bile produced by both, right? Let's say you want to see how much bile this meat eater or animal-based diet person produces versus the plant-based eater. The plant-based eater will produce between 2 liters of bile a day. The other one will produce 4 liters or 5, more bile. So sometimes people take the prazols for reflux, and they still have reflux, especially at night when they go to bed. So they get a double dose, they get a triple dose, and they get the idea that sometimes they're getting a little better, but not so much. It's because there's bile now. Bile that is in the small bowel. When you lay down also from the small bowel to the stomach, there's about this distance only. So that bile returns to your stomach, goes up to your esophagus, and you feel the same burning sensation if you feel it. But that's bile. That's a different thing. If you change to a plant-based diet and you cut in half the production of bile, that's it. Solved. This bile is actually refluxing into the esophagus, produces more cancer than the acid. You probably heard about Barrett's esophagus and esophageal cancer. That's a precancerous condition. Now, as physicians, we have the mission of detecting cancer early. And some people say, well, that's all we need to do. We need to do mammograms every year. We need to do colonoscopies every 10 years. We need to look at the esophagus of people having reflux frequently to detect precancerous cells. And once we know they have those, then we have to follow them every year, right? You come back here, another mammogram, another colonoscopy, more polyps removed. Instead of saying, well, okay, so you do have this precancerous condition. Do you want to revert it? I've seen it with my own eyes in a number of patients. I just don't have the time to sit down and write a scientific paper. Hopefully, somebody can have out of the experience we had. But patients that have multiple polyps or precancerous changes on the esophagus and stomach, we have a little more stomach. This is probably not applicable to you. We have a great Hispanic population. Well, all third world countries actually have this higher proportion of stomach cancer. And we have seen the precancerous changes. Sometimes they are so obvious that you can see with your eyes, this stomach is sick, it's inflamed, it's angry. And we take biopsies and we tell these patients, you have an infection with this bacteria called Helicobacter pylori, you have precancerous changes, we need to kill the bacteria and then keep watching you every year or two, make sure you don't develop cancer. I tell my patients, just change to a plant-based diet. We have a person in our clinic that is an expert on how to motivate people, how to inform people on doing this change without coming from above and lashing them. You have to do this, you have to do that. And it's our son, actually. God has gifted him with that. And I've seen the changes in the bowels and in the stomachs of these people that were involved with precancerous changes, going back to a lesser stage. In more instances, larger areas of stomach and bowel becoming almost normal on biopsy tissues, just because of the change. So all these conditions can be reverted. You can modify your genes by what you eat. You can modify your genes by the good food that God has created. It's all fresh, it's appealing to the eye, full of colors, and it's going to result in less reflux, less production of bile, less constipation. Just briefly about constipation, we already mentioned diverticulosis, which is these pouches, right, that form in the wall of your bowel. You've probably seen, you're old enough, if you're old enough, to see the tubes that were in tires before, right? Now they are tubeless tires, right? Remember the tubes that we had in tires before? And some of us wore those for lifesavers, right? Because that was our lifesaver in the beach and the rivers, because the tube was just too patched up, right? Remember? Yeah, Father said, this is not good, so you can use it. So they're all patched up, and if we continue to use that, we saw that in some areas the tube was getting a little weak, and a little bleb will form. And we know, ooh, this is going to break any time. Well, we thought that this was the effect of aging, the bowel will get weaker like a tube of a tire, and little blebs will form, until Dr. Dennis Burkitt was a British investigator, demonstrated that this is not aging. He went to Africa, and he studied autopsy material, and he operated on people for different problems, and he did not see any diverticulosis in people in Africa. So they thought it must be something racial. No, it's not racial, it's just diet related. If you eat fiber every day, and you don't have to eat, a bucket of fiber. If you have a plant-based diet, you have enough fiber. If you eat 5 servings of fruits for your breakfast, and you eat 3 to 5, let's say 5 again, servings of vegetables for your lunch, you will have enough fiber. You eat potatoes, those have fiber. The peels have more fiber. If you eat all of that, you won't develop diverticulosis. Your bowel will move everything along. If you have a refined diet, your bowel has to squeeze all this and try to push stools that are harder and stickier. It's not that they are harder, they are really stickier. They stick to the walls, so the bowel has to work extra. So these little blebs are being formed, and you may say, well, I already have that, what can I do? Well, you can change to a plant-based diet so you have less of those forming. Unfortunately, we don't have data yet that they will revert back and you have a normal colon. But at least those pouches will not get full of sticky stool containing bad bacteria found in cheeses and meats and dairy and cause inflammation and diverticulitis. So even if you've been told you need to have this bowel removed, you had 2 attacks already of diverticulitis, and we better remove that bowel, That is true. If you're going to keep eating the same diet, you better get that surgery done. Oh, yes. Because you're going to get a third attack, and that may be the last one. May get infection in your whole system. But if you change to a plant-based diet, you drink enough water. A plant-based diet is not donuts, right? Donuts, some people say, oh, donuts are made of wheat, they're made of good things. No. Plant-based diet is whole foods, fresh food. You don't have to be afraid of these surgeries. Of course, people die of accidents and old age, even being plant-based eaters, but you won't die of these cancers. And some of them say, oh, wait a minute, I have an uncle, an aunt that was a plant-based eater and ended up with cancer anyway. Yeah, once in a while they do. And it's because they may have not understood the concept well. They were vegetarians, but they were eating a lot of refined products anyway. There's some fruit juices. People like fruit juices. Sometimes they think they're healthy. They're packed in lunches for the kids. Be careful. Better give them an apple. But they're going to laugh. The little classmates, they can be very cruel. Look at this, ridiculous lunch. You go to the Minute Maid apple juice. I was given the other day a Minute Maid apple juice. It's healthy. Take it. I look at the Minute Maid apple juice and I read the ingredients. Water. Okay. Number 2, high fructose corn syrup. I said, what? High fructose corn syrup. We're going to just try to cover a little bit of the fatty liver. High fructose corn syrup is fructose. Fructose is the sugar of the fruits. It's healthy. Not so. Fruits have different sugars. Fructose is just a component of those sugars. When you eat a fruit, there's fructose, but it comes attached to some of the sugars. When you eat that and you absorb that in your body, fructose goes one by one. As soon as that fructose gets into the blood, is transformed into glucose, which is the normal blood sugar. That happens when you just eat a little bit of this, right? If you have a host of molecules of fructose coming into the bowel goes, they just go in. Fructose is the only sugar that does not need a passport check at the intestinal border to get in the blood. It's the only sugar. All the other sugars, Mr. Glucose comes here, okay, where are you coming from? Show me your papers, we have to make sure you're not a terrorist, okay, yeah, you're fine. Here, stamp, in. To every sugar in our body, that happens. I think the other one is the one from mother's milk, right, that just gets in also. The galactose, can get it freely. But anyway, fructose, in small amounts, just goes in our blood system. By the time it gets to the liver, it gets transformed into sugar. Thank you. But if you eat a product that is laden with fructose, all those just get into your system. They get into your liver. Your liver goes, when there's a little ticket guy at a function and 100 people show up and the function is about to start and they all are eager to enter, he's just going to say, okay, just go in. The liver transforms most of this fructose into short fatty acids, then into long fatty acids, and stores them around for later processing in the same liver as fat. So we have this condition called fatty liver. Almost everyone that is overweight, you should know your height and your weight and calculate your body mass index. If you don't know your body mass index, you can go to any computer and type on your search body mass index, enter your height, enter your weight, and the program will pop up your body mass index. If that is more than 25, you're overweight. If that is more than 30, you're obese. If that is more than 40, you're very obese. Okay? So, that's okay. We are all human. We start at different points, okay? That's nothing to be ashamed of. My body mass index was 26. Okay, that's it. That's where I start. But let's make a change. And by the use of a plant-based diet that doesn't have any artificial ingredients, instead of apple juice, we're gonna eat apples. We're not going to drink the freshly, apple juice. Better eat the apples with the peels. Bite on those little seeds if you can. You're going to get antioxidants galore. I didn't know what was I missing until I started doing just that. Every morning, you're eager to just wake up. You have energy. You sleep well. You don't eat your dinner late because you don't want to have reflux. You want to sleep soundly. Interestingly enough, those people that have the snoring at night and they thought they slept 10 hours, they feel as fatigued as if they only have slept 2 hours. That's a known fact. You know, they call this sleep apnea, but it's just a reflex integrated mechanism on your protection, on strengthening these muscles here so you prevent yourself from being choking with your own secretions. So everything is interrelated. And the Bible tells us that we are better if we are at peace, if we go and sleep in peace. And if we give our troubles, give our needs, our wants to the only one that can resolve them, we can enjoy in the goodness He has created. We can not only live a little more, but we can actually live more satisfying and fulfilling lives, more quality of life. So if you're starting late in your life already and you have the effects, don't hesitate to make the change. Insulin creates more muscles in your arteries, therefore increasing your blood pressure. We can get two individuals and check their sugar levels. They are 80 and 80, normal. Both of them are normal, right? But for this person that eats a plant-based diet, it takes this person 30 units of his own insulin that he produces to maintain that level. And for the other one that eats an animal-based diet that has the same level of sugar, it may take 60 units of his own insulin to maintain that level. So we check sugar and they say, you both are normal. The other one has 3 times more or 2 times more insulin. This person with 2 times more insulin will produce more cholesterol caused by that insulin, will have thickening of his arteries because of that insulin. So a few years down the road, that person is diagnosed with high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And when the pancreas, the organ in charge of producing that insulin, it just gets tired, then the sugar levels will slowly start rising, and then after many years, the person will be told, you have diabetes. It's a process that can be reverted. And we can speak more about this if you guys have put up with me and want to invite us again, about the rest of how our digestion and the things we eat absorb and modify our system can result in better health or in disease. May God bless you. Thank you.